Cheese curds tossed in seasoning on a bed of Kringle-cut fries with a demi-glaze and cheese sauce drizzle topped with herbs and more cheese.
By the way, Darren Breeden in 2018 set the world record eating 5 pounds, 2 ounces of cheese curds in 6 minutes.
Man, that sounds kind of tasty.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time, this is Kristin Brey with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin! Happy Hump Day. Jane, how you doing?
I am fantastic.
How are you?
I am. Yesterday again was one of those perfect weather days.
It was pretty perfect.
It was
yesterday.
pretty perfect, yeah.
I'm like on the countdown of checking as quickly. I think as of tomorrow, I can see what the weather is forecasted for August 20th. So that's the big day. That's the big day. I almost cut my finger off last night with a Cutco knife. So
that's not good.
So, and luckily it's on my left hand, so likely I will have a scar in the pictures.
But that will lead to a great story one day. I was so distracted. A week before my wedding, I almost cut my finger off. See, there's proof.
After Mike warned me, he's like, these were just sharpened.
They're the greatest knives.
Please be careful.
I have a set of Cutco knives. I do. And I'm the biggest disappointment to my Cutco salesman because he'll come by and actually to my house and sharpen my knives. And then he tries to pitch me and stuff. And I'm like, Kevin, I'm not buying anything else.
No, you're like.
And I have no leads for you. I'm the suckiest customer you've ever had. Thank you for sharpening
Thank you for sharpening our knives. All right. Well, our guest today, third time, is a charm? I don't know. Joe Zepecki.
One of these times we'll figure it out.
One of these times. Joe Zepecki, Democratic strategist and campaign veteran, is here to break down the primaries. And you've made some rounds already this morning. It's your voice.
And last night.
Your vocal cords are warmed up.
Yeah, no need for how now brown cow. How now brown cow.
So I have, before we really dive into it, either of you could tell me if you've been in news and politics long enough that you've had dreams about candidates, because I went to sleep because I was on with Cree last night, the hour before you were on with them. And I went to sleep like refreshing results. It was pretty clear Michael's
it's not healthy.
was going to win. We tried to watch we're watching Uncoupled with Neil Patrick Harris, and so I was trying. No, it's not. I don't love it.
Did you have money on the Democratic race for treasurer? Is that why you were refreshing furiously at that hour?
I don't know. It's whatever. But I ended up having a dream, and Rebecca Clayfish was in it.
Oh boy!
It was not. It was.
Is this content suitable for all
yes,
ages?
It is.
First of all,
we were having an actual conversation, woman to woman, about her campaign because she had lost, and in person, it was in the dream she had let her guard down, so her voice was like down an octave. And she wasn't doing like the sing-songy, like everything has been rehearsed that's coming out of my mouth. Like she was actually being a real person.
Have you ever met her in person?
No.
She's lovely. She's charming. She's a wonderful person to just sit and chat with.
And I feel like that's kind of what the dream was, because I felt there's a part of me that while the politics she runs on and the platform she runs on, I probably agree politically very little with this woman, but there's still something that I feel really bad for her, that she has been working her ass off for 3.5 years, only to have Michaels come in with all his bags of money in 3 months. And I don't know if that's what the dream was about, but it was fast too. I just remember having a conversation, and what I woke up with was like, oh, that wasn't her real voice. But so let's start there. Let's start on the Republican governor's race. Michaels wins by about 5 points.
Trump wins by about 5 points. Oh, you know, you're right. Yeah,
is that how you see it?
Absolutely. This was a close slobber knocker of an election where the two candidates were ripping each other's faces off, and in a race decided by 5 points, everything matters, right? And so obviously Trump coming to town on Friday. I mean, look at the impact Trump had in the Voss race. Clearly, it is still Donald Trump's party in large part, not entirely, but Donald Trump has a looming shadow over the Republican Party. It's part of why they're so divided today, which we'll get more into. But yeah, without Donald Trump. I'm not sure Tim Michels is the nominee.
That's interesting because I've asked this multiple times this week and no one's really given me an answer. Because after Blake Masters won last week in Arizona, and obviously we're all obsessed with it, Wisconsin politics. So understandably, not everyone was watching that race. But Blake Masters, venture capitalist, billionaire, like buddies with Peter Thiel, also had Trump's endorsement. But my question in the comparison of him to here was how much of it is money and the ability to just blanket every medium and have everyone just see your face, whether you're watching videos on YouTube, whether you're on TV, whether you're listening to the radio, like he was everywhere. And how much of it is the Trump endorsement?
Well, it's both. I mean, you have to have resources to get the message out. But part of the message that Michels was getting out with all those ads and all that money was, I'm Donald Trump's guy. He wanted to be associated with Trump. He tied himself to Trump. I'm not sure that's going to go so well in the next 90 days, but it certainly helped him win a Republican primary.
So do you think that this race was more of an embrace of Michels or a rejection of Clayfish and Walker?
I don't even know. I mean, they're so divided, right? I mean, a couple 100,000 votes for Clayfish. And that to me is the big takeaways. The Republican Party is divided at a time when they should be turning their attention to the general election. And so there's division. It's not just the 220,000 votes that Clayfish got. It's the 30,000 plus votes that Ramthan, the most election denying somehow of all of them, the most all in on Donald Trump's big lie and attempt to overturn the 2020 election. He got 30,000 votes. So the Republican Party is divided. The other race we saw that in, sorry if I'm jumping ahead, is in the Republican Senate primary. Ron Johnson had a Republican running against him.
You said that this morning as I was listening to one of your many rounds this morning, and I didn't even see that. I didn't even pay attention to that.
You know who did? 110,000 Republican primary voters who voted against Ron Johnson for renomination. This other candidate was a never Trump, Republican, and despite not running any ads, not running much of a campaign, you had more than 100,000 Republican primary voters look at Ron Johnson and say, nope, that's not for me. Wow. I mean, the ironies abound here, right? Like Ron Johnson knows, because he was caught on secret videos saying that the reason Donald Trump lost Wisconsin in 2020 was there were 50,000 Wisconsin voters who voted for Republicans for Congress, but didn't cast a ballot for Donald Trump. He knows it was Republicans in that regard who cost Trump Wisconsin. And here he is with the same type of challenge. He's been so extreme and so controversial. More than 100,000 Republicans wanted to fire him. That's gobsmacking.
Yeah. I want to get back to that because I want to stick with the governor's race because now we move on. All right. So Clayfish is moved. We'll see if Bice asked this morning, is this the end of Walker and Clayfish? But
that's the second time Trump got Walker.
Yeah.
Got him in the run for president, got him in this race. Man, tough look for former Governor Walker.
Yeah. And so as we now look to, do you feel like as a matchup, this is a harder or easier or just different between Michels and Evers?
I'm not sure it makes all that much different in that race in a vacuum. I do think that it's inconvenient for Republicans that both of their statewide top of the ticket nominees, Ron Johnson and Tim Michels, are extraordinarily wealthy. So like multi-millionaires. We've got Michels with the $17 million mansion in Connecticut and that condo in Manhattan. None of his kids went to school here. They were going to private schools. So I think that is more important than the actual particulars of the matchup between Michels and Evers, because on the core issues that matter to voters, there wasn't a ton of daylight between Michels and Clayfish. Mm-hmm. They both hold extreme, out of the mainstream views on abortion and women's access to reproductive health care. They both hold what I would call extreme views on education that would, really hammer public schools in this state. So on the issues, there wasn't much difference between the two of them. So I don't think if it was Clayfish this morning, we'd be talking about a lot of the same issues.
That's interesting that you say that, because I feel like watching Michels talk at like the debate or his speech on Friday at the rally, his and Trump's rally, however you want to frame it.
The Gableman rally.
He is not a very compelling speaker and doesn't come off as the most having the strongest handle on the issues versus Clayfish. Absolutely, right? Like she knows this stuff so much inside and out. And so while maybe their what they say their stance is seems the same, I am curious as he now has another 3 months to keep having to talk and people get to know him, if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I don't know how well he's going to wear. He strikes me as that's the guy you work for. And when the boss comes down on the floor of the factory or comes to like check on you, you just kind of roll your eyes as he walks away. That's the energy that I'm getting from Tim Michaels. And I'm not sure that blue collar, workers in Wisconsin are going to look at that and go, oh yeah. That's the guy I want in charge.
But yet his sign is the one that's littered all over northern Wisconsin. Like my parents were in Wood County. His sign was everywhere. I think there's not a Clayfish sign to be seen up there. And so despite how wealthy he is and how much he may not be an actual Wisconsinite, he's clearly there's something about him that people have been like, I see myself in that guy.
Sure. And I think some of it is the outrage and the anger that he's stoking. And, the association with Trump, particularly in the northern parts of the state, helped him a lot. But we'll see how he wears with Wisconsin voters. I agree with you. He did not look particularly sharp in that debate. I've heard some focus groups with Republicans who kind of wish he was more assertive and sure of himself and sounded more like Trump.
And less
which
sweaty.
Is sort of astonishing to me, of course. But
they view him as
not
as polished as Trump.
And so, does that make him Trump light in their eyes? And is that good enough? I don't know. But it's a problem, in my view, for particularly voters in the middle, when you can tell that a candidate for high public office hasn't done their homework.
Yeah.
Right. There's a certain credibility threshold you have to reach. He clearly didn't know what Dreamers were, what DACA was during that gubernatorial debate. He's got to go to school a little bit. That's one more job for him to do this morning and into the general election. He's got to put his party together, heal a divided house, and bone up on the issues.
All right. Well, when we come back, there's been a lot of domain purchasing and a lot of fake websites out there. So we're going to talk about it. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
Listen to my show, The Matt McNeil Show, weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. on the Shaw 101. 1 hour every weekday where we'll talk all sorts of things like politics, especially with what's going on this election season, plus a lot of other things too. Parenting, the arts, religion, music, beer.
or 7 at WAUK.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. My guest today is Joe Zepecki, and we are breaking down primary results. We talked about the governor's race. Let's move on to what was pretty much a foregone conclusion and was called within
A coronation more than an election.
35 minutes. What's the fastest election results you can remember paying attention to?
Oh God, all these election nights are really starting to run together.
Yeah, you've been doing it for a while, but
you remember? I'll say this: you remember the long nights more than you remember the short nights.
All right. I actually thought last night was going to be longer for between Michaels and Clayfish. I was surprised it was called before midnight. But on the flip side, Mandela was called by 8:30, 8:35. His party was rocking. We had Earl Ingram there picking up the noise, and it looked very fun. I did not go because I had to be on the radio the next day. Actually, I had to be on the radio last night. But no surprise to anyone, Ron Johnson's camp was ready to go as soon as that was announced. And basically by 8:55, already had a tweet thread on his Twitter account and also an official statement on,
let me guess, Mandela bad, Mandela scary.
Bad. Mandela
wow,
bad.
who could have seen that coming?
How left, the most radical left candidate for the U.S. Senate race. And you and I both listened to veteran talk radio host who now runs the Bulwark, Charlie Sykes. As I always say, I was not here for the reign of his stranglehold on the Republican Party in Wisconsin. So I listen to him now as a never Trumper, which I find palatable. I understand that some people will probably
sometimes more than others
never forgive him for what he's done to Wisconsin. But when I listen to him and every single podcast where this race comes up, he is absolutely convinced that Mandela has no chance. And I don't know if it's like, and I don't know if it's just because you live in the echo chambers that you live in, right? Like I live in a much more left-leaning Democratic echo chamber. I've lived in Madison and Milwaukee. The closest thing outside of those two metro areas I get to is Wisconsin Rapids. So I totally understand that my reality is different than Charlie Sykes' reality and who he hangs out with and who he talks to, right? But I feel like this is going to be a close race. I think it's going to be so ugly.
Yeah, it'll be an ugly race. It'll be a close race. Let's back up for just one second, though. How did they spell radical in that tweet thread? Did they spell it right that time?
I think it's right.
Okay, that's
good.
Wait,
how did they spell it?
Because we've seen multiple people, including Scott Walker, accidentally, air quotes, spell it, the most racial candidate. What, could they be talking about the black guy? Could they be talking about the historic figure who is the first black lieutenant governor in Wisconsin history, who is the first black man to lead a major party ticket for the U.S. Senate? Mandela, whether you like him, hate him, or are somewhere in the middle, this is a historic gentleman, and we should at least afford some respect that has been severely lacking from my perspective, from his opponents and from people on the other side of the aisle. They wish that at 35, they had been as accomplished as Mandela Barnes is. This is an exciting moment for Wisconsin. We have a nominee who reflects the lived experience of more people and different people who have been shut out of our political process for far too long. If you can't get excited about that, if you can't understand the importance of that, I don't know what to tell you, but perspectives matter. And the perspectives that Mandela brings as a young black man who grew up the son of a third shift worker and a public school teacher and squarely in the middle class, he will be a very different type of United States senator, right? Hats off to him last night for poking fun at himself and pointing out that if he walks in the doors of the United States Senate, the average net worth is going to plummet. He will be the poorest United States senator by a good margin, would be my guess. This is a millionaires club, and now Democrats in Wisconsin have an opportunity to send somebody with a different reality, a different lived experience to the Senate, a historic figure. Congratulations to Mandela. This is an exciting day. And before we talk about the nonsense and the partisan food fight that's coming, we should just take a moment to sort of tip our cap and think about what a historic day that was. Good for him. Good for us.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us back, because I wanted to get into it right away, but I think you're totally right. And I listened to his speech, and he does come off as so authentic, right? And that this has been something, I don't know if specifically for Senate, but as far as the conversations I've had with him, like he's been called to serve basically since graduating college, right?
Mhm.
And that between running for assembly and then trying to run for state Senate,
Organizing his community before he
Yes.
ran for anything. This is a
Yeah.
young man who felt called to service and has tried to make life better for people. And by the way, in doing so, has sacrificed a tremendous amount, right? This is a dynamic, brilliant young guy who could be making a lot more money doing something else. But his passion to serve is so strong that he has dedicated his life to this. And here we are. So yeah, I'm glad we've got that. Taking a moment to sort of note that and mark that. And now we can get into
well, no, because I want to go off of what you said that he said in his speech, because I'm interested in how he conducts the messaging of his campaign, because like Dan Schaefer was in here last week, who, you know, he was talking as he was writing this article that just premiered last night, or got published last night in
the
New York
New York
Times. Congrats to
Times.
Dan Schaefer. That the word he kept hearing was coalition. And I think what the Republicans are going to try to do is paint him this super radical left guy, but in the messaging that he used last night in his speech, and if he's taking a couple tips from Tammy Baldwin of like, nice guy, middle class guy, I'm someone different that isn't always represented in politics, but I'm also like you. And so do you feel like that more than hard on policy, leading with this, that, or the other on what we're going to do with Medicare for all, or, you know, any more of like who he is as a person rather than talking about policy, is like that the way to go, as he really for the first time is going to introduce himself to so many more people in the state who don't know much about him?
It is increasingly important that voters feel like they know you and understand where you're coming from and your values. And the reason for that is the information environment in which we live, right? We are constantly bombarded by information. You and I, who follow this stuff religiously every single day, can't consume it all. We can't know the outcome of every roll call vote in Congress. We can't know every candidate's position on every single issue. It's impossible. So think about how hard that is for the normal folks, right, who spend 5 to 10 minutes a week at most thinking about politics.
Yeah.
They don't have time for that. They're too busy getting the kids to soccer practice and running to the grocery store between meetings during the day. And what those folks need to know is that they can trust someone to try and do the right thing. They want to believe that that person who's representing them has at least some inkling of what their life is like, what they're struggling with, and will have their back no matter what. That's why the very best politicians lead with their values and then fill in, you know, the policy particulars. The other thing that I think Mandela does a really great job of, and it's a stark contrast in this race, is I don't know that I've ever heard him say these words, but when I listen to him, I hear a guy who knows that at its very best, politics is about addition. It is about building coalitions, bringing people together, because the more of us there are on the same page, the more we can accomplish. That stands in stark contrast to a Republican Party and to an incumbent senator like Ron Johnson, who is constantly looking to divide us, who are looking for these wedge issues to drive people further apart, to, you know, stoke their own base without trying to add to their coalition. Mandela Barnes, it seems to me, really understands that politics should be about addition. That's what I heard last night. That's what I expect we'll see from him in the next 90 days.
So now that they're both on the ticket together, who gets a better bump, Evers or Mandela? Who's in a better position because the other one is on the ticket?
Oh, that's interesting. You're really making me put my strategist cap on today.
Because I mean, it's not unlike, in a lot of ways. I mean, they were together on 2018, and I think some people have said that having Mandela on the ticket put Evers over the edge because he turned out Milwaukee and maybe the young vote, and does that even though it's a different position. It's not lieutenant governor; it's an even more important position, and much more important position. But is there enthusiasm that the pundits have said that Democrats don't have in midterm years, that a young, vibrant Black candidate could bring out from Milwaukee, that maybe otherwise wouldn't have shown up?
Well, more than the raw politics of it, what I think is a glaring difference is when you look at sort of the big three on each side. Governor candidate for the Republicans, white guy. Lieutenant governor candidate for Republicans, white guy. Republican Senate candidate for Republicans, white guy. And then on the Democratic side, you've got Tony Evers, white guy.
Yeah.
Sarah Rodriguez, lieutenant governor nominee, woman. And then you've got a black man running for the United States Senate. I think it's really important that people see themselves reflected in our leaders. There are young men and women in Milwaukee and around the state who are black, who are waking up today and seeing a new possibility for themselves. There are women across the state who see a Democratic Party ticket that is more reflective of our communities. That's a good thing. So I just think that that contrast, I think, sets up really nicely. I also think that there is something to be said for having a new generation of leaders, right? So much of our politics has been defined by a couple of 80-year-olds, right? Joe Biden and Donald Trump, whatever else you think about them, the reality is they are both pretty old.
It's not just them. It's
Right.
Schumer, it's
Yeah,
Pelosi,
Schumer,
it's Mitch
Pelosi, all of
McConnell.
them.
It's
Yeah,
what is
so-
it? Like over half the Senate or like 75% of the Senate is over 65?
I'm not surprised by that.
It's
I might take
something-
the
it's
over
something.
on that. And so, yeah, when you want young people to believe that politics is a way to make positive change, that it's a way to enhance and improve our system and the way that we make decisions as a country and as a state, I think it's fantastic that we've got younger leaders stepping up in both Sarah Rodriguez and Mandela Barnes. I think it is more likely that you will see more college students, young professionals who kind of see themselves reflected in those candidates, who see what's happening in this country and in this state and go, I need to get out there too. If they can give up, lucrative careers doing something else to stand for office and take all the slings and arrows that come with that, the least I can do is find the 30 minutes it'll take out of my workday to go and cast a vote in November. So I think there is a benefit there. And let's not sugarcoat it. The reality is this is a tough political environment for Democrats. So anytime you can have more enthusiasm, have more energy and excitement, I think that's to the benefit of Democrats in this political environment.
How many of those 100,000 votes that voted against Ron Johnson do you think he can actually siphon off?
I think it's folly to think he can get all of them.
Totally.
But if the way Wisconsin elections work, it's so obscene, right? Like if you look at the party by party splits, right? Like a Democratic candidate will get like 97% of Democrats, 3% of Republicans, and then the independents will break down and you can kind of figure out who's going to win or lose. So what that means is in a head-to-head matchup, if Mandela Barnes can get 97 or 98% of Democrats and keep Johnson at only getting like 90% of Republicans, that makes Johnson's math much harder statewide. It means that Barnes can actually afford to lose a few independent voters. And because of how closely divided this state is and how narrow the margins in our elections are, it all matters, right? I've told this story 100 times, it feels like, in the last 24 hours, but there have been 12 statewide elections since Donald Trump won Wisconsin in 2016. The progressive candidate has won 11 of them. But now that's like astonishing, right? That's a pretty good winning streak. But let's talk about
Tony Evers ran as a progressive?
Of course he did. He was supported by progressives. He is a progressive. He's ended up running for office as a Democrat. So his DPI win counts. But let's look at some of the margins in those races. The one race progressive lost was by 5,000 votes. Josh Kaul won by like 8,000 votes. Joe Biden, 23,000 votes. Tony Evers, 30,000 votes. These are razor thin margins where out of 3 million votes cast, it's coming down to tens of thousands of votes. It all matters.
Yeah.
And so you would much rather be Mandela Barnes with a united Democratic Party today than Ron Johnson with a divided party and who's got problems on his right flank. This is the most astonishing part of it to me. More Republicans voted against Ron Johnson in that primary than voted against Mandela Barnes in the Democratic primary, despite the fact that all of those campaigns were active until very recently.
Interesting math. All right, when we come back, we'll break down some of the other down ballot races that were interesting. Stay with us. As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
WAUK and the Shah are the new kids on the radio block. And that block happens to be on Wisconsin Ave, Waukesha. Now is a great time to advertise locally with 540 AM and the Shaw 101 FM, while the ads are inexpensive and the audience is rapidly growing. Sponsorships available for This Week in Waukesha, Raised in the Shaw, or live local music on the weekends. Spring packages starting at just $495 a month. Get started today by emailing info@waukradio.com.
The real estate market in Dane County and surrounding areas has been a bit of a hot mess this year. Listings are being picked off above asking prices and without the home inspection contingencies. I'm Todd Osborne, owner of Orion Inspections, and even if I weren't a home inspector, I'd still cringe a little if any of my friends or family tried to buy a home without an inspection. Let's take a good hard look at that house before you sign. Want to know more? I'm here to help. OrionInspections.com. That's Orion, like the constellation, inspections.com.
Announcing Friday Night Live, broadcasting live from Waukesha and only on the Shaw 540 AM and 101 FM. Live music every Friday night beginning at 6 p.m., broadcasting from the 5 Points in downtown Waukesha. Friday Night Live broadcasting begins June 3rd at 6 p.m. and will play out all summer long. A special guest host each Friday night. Tune in for the music and variety or come downtown to the 5 Points and join the party. Friday Night Live only on the Shaw.
Hi folks, this is Kirk Bankstad at the Minocqua Brewing Company, and I am proud to introduce you to Choice, our new pink grapefruit flavored hard seltzer. Choice was made in collaboration with Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, and 5% of the proceeds from every can goes to support them and their fight for reproductive freedom. Choice hard seltzer tastes great and comes in at only 105 calories per can. Go to our website, MinocquaBrewingCompany.com, to find where you can buy Choice hard seltzer.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. You know, every time I've come back, even though we've been doing this for 6 weeks-ish now, I keep thinking there's a split second. It's like, am I saying the name of my own show? Right. It's As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. All right, here we go.
And we should let's bring listeners in on this. I've selected some songs that Jane is playing, ins and outs. There's a theme here. We're going to see if Kristin can figure it out. We'll see if any of our listeners can figure it out.
All right, so the call and text line is 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-PARTY. If you want to text us or call us by the end of the show, or even before, if you figure out, if you solve the riddle with only vowels,
there's
you
a through
can
line
call
to these songs.
Okay,
I don't think you're going to get it.
I probably won't get it. I'm not the best at riddles.
The one at the end is the dead giveaway. So we'll see if you get that one.
All right. Well, if you listening at home can figure out the through line between all of the bumper music today, let us know. And in the meantime,
let's talk more about elections.
Did you make it to the Voss toss?
I did not make it to the Voss toss. This is another one where I'm going to be a stick in the mud. I'm sorry. The specter of political violence is not funny.
I know.
I understand that Voss rhymes with toss. And listen, I would like to toss Voss out of office. And if I had the opportunity to vote against him in a legislative race, I would, but he doesn't represent my district, so I can't. I
care less about talking about the Voss toss and more of that was a funny way to enter the conversation about the fact that Voss only won by a couple hundred votes last night.
Less than 300, I think was the final number. By the hairs of his chinny chin chin.
And I guess this is more of a hypothetical, because Jane and I were talking about this morning. Had he actually lost last night, who would have stepped up and been the Speaker of the Assembly?
Oh, God. I don't
who? Because I feel like what I've heard is he's had such he's ruled the Assembly with such a strong fist for so long now that there's a lot of people who may have had more of a backbone and stood up to him, that a lot of those people have left, like Steinecke's left. And so because it certainly wouldn't have been Adam Steen had he actually won last night, right? And
Correct.
So in this upside down world where Voss would have lost last night, he didn't. So this is all hypothetical and a counterfactual. But I was trying to think of who would even be in charge, who would step up to the plate.
Well, if we're playing counterfactuals, who's to say if Robin Voss hadn't won renomination that he wouldn't have launched a write-in campaign? He likes being Speaker of the Assembly. He loves the political game.
Yeah.
And there's no Democrat in that district, right? So Maybe Voss would have run a write-in campaign. And when I say, he loves the game and he loves the politics, let's talk about the most astonishing part of it. Is it astonishing that Donald Trump backed Adam Steen? No, it's not. Is it a little surprising that Adam Steen got within 300 votes? Yeah, it is. Because Voss was working his tail off because he knew that might happen. Here's the thing that's astonishing from last night. In his remarks, immediately after declaring himself the winner, what did we hear from Robin Voss?
Do we have the clip?
Let's roll the clip.
Let's roll the clip.
Let's roll what Mr. Voss had to say.
Mike Gableman is an embarrassment to the state. So I am going to take some time to talk with my caucus next week. We actually have a caucus on Tuesday. I'm going to talk about it with all the members and see what the next step should be. But I am not going to let my joy for tonight be focused on a person like Mike Gableman who isn't worth the time to talk about.
Wow.
Mike Gableman.
Wow.
Mike Gableman is an embarrassment to the state.
But here's what we need to keep in mind. That was true last Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
It was true last month. It was true a year ago. But Robin Voss couldn't bring himself to say that until 3 days after Mike Gableman endorsed his political opponent. Want to know how I know this is all a scam, that Republicans like Robin Voss and Gableman and all of them are running on you? Because of nonsense like this. It's so gross. I don't even know what else there is to say about it. Like, now he's an embarrassment because he endorsed your political opponent?
Not because of the sham and
not
clown
because
show
you're not
he's been doing for
maintaining
over a year.
records, not because you're wasting taxpayer money, not because you're calling for an unconstitutional act, which is to decertify the 2020 election. We're just going to let all of that slide. But don't you dare cross me. Don't you dare go to bat for my political opponent, or I will end you.
Yeah.
I will call you an embarrassment, and I'll try to fire you if my caucus lets me. Right? I mean, what are we doing here? If Robin Voss wanted to fire Michael Gableman, he would be packing up his crate before lunch today. But he's not doing it. So I don't know, man.
Do you think because I heard that as I had to talk to my caucus to make it look like I'm a team player. Do you think he actually needs to get their input before he could just pull the plug?
I know he's got to do his politics and he needs the support of his caucus.
Okay.
But if he wanted him gone, he would already be gone.
The other quote that he had last night, you don't have to be a lapdog to whatever Donald Trump says.
That's rich.
That's what his victory showed.
That is rich.
All right. So besides that narrow defeat, any other of the races last night down ballot, whether it was the 3rd congressional seat or the Republican attorney general seat, anything that caught your eye?
You will not find a better Wisconsinite, a better person than Brad Pfaff. I've had the privilege to know Brad and his brother for about 20 years now. These are just the best people.
Yeah.
Brad, another one who has committed his life to service, has worked in Washington for the Department of Agriculture for former Representative Ron Kind. Brad is just good people. And I wish him well in a matchup that is against a pretty repugnant Republican.
Yeah.
So that one jumped out. Hats off to Rebecca Cook as well. That was a surprising number to me. I thought McGrath probably would have come in second in that race. So, Rebecca Cook has a bright future ahead of her, it would seem to me.
Mm-hmm.
Very competitive race for state treasurer to replace outgoing treasurer Sarah Godlewski, who of course couldn't run because she was on the ballot for the Senate race. 3-way race that really came down to the bitter end. Was a little surprised to see that. I think the most important race last night, truly, and the best possible outcome is that Adam Jarko will not be the Republican nominee for Attorney General. I'm sorry, Mr. Jarko has no business in any position of authority or public trust or law enforcement. The things that he has advocated for and has said are deeply troubling, deeply concerning. This is a 50-50 state. Josh Kaul could lose. I hope he doesn't. He's been a great attorney general. He deserves 4 more years. But this way, at least, if Josh Kaul loses, it won't be to Adam Jarko.
Yeah, that was kind of my opinion as well, especially because his tweet after, because we talked about his mailer yesterday, where apparently it's now a losing. It's like a campaign point to point out that someone said racism was bad and that this country has a history of racism, because that was something he said about Eric Toney. But then this morning he tweeted out that he conceded, and it's such a weird thing to me with politics. in like partisan primaries where you can have a really ugly partisan primary and then all of a sudden you wake up the next day and it's just let bygones be bygones and we're all going to fall in line. And
Tribalism's tough, man. And I should say, like, listen, like Tony has proven to be a bit of a phony, and I think he's going to have real problems in the general election. People that have known him for years are coming out of the woodwork and saying that he is not the person he is presenting himself to be to voters. So make of that what you will. I think that'll be an issue in the general. We know who Josh Call is. We know what he's done, but thank God it's not Jarko.
Thank God it's not Jarko. All right. Got a break for the news. We'll be back in a minute.
Hey, it's Pizza Box Mike. I've got a show outside the Pizza Box. Be sure to listen on Saturdays at
GOP voters selecting businessman Tim Michels over former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish. Michels now faces off against incumbent Democratic Governor Tony Evers in November. Sunny today, high 83. Slight chance of showers tonight, low 61. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK, 540 AM.
Live programming for WAUK Radio 540 AM and 101 FM is produced right in the Shaw in beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Big Bend to Menominee Falls. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to Ask Us Wisconsin with Kristin and Brey. We're trying to figure out where guest host Joe Zepecki's brain is when he was coming up with today's bumper music in and out of the breaks. I have not figured out the riddle yet. If you have figured it out,
no guesses.
I mean, besides like rock and roll,
Okay.
I
mean, I guess that's all true so far.
yeah.
But it's not.
It's not the theme.
Yeah.
If you have a guess of what the theme is of the bumper music, please give us a call or a text, 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. I don't, something to do with a man?
You'll get there.
The man and
I think I believe in
the
you,
man?
Kristin.
I don't know. All right. Well, moving on from the primaries. Who's afraid of the IRS? Especially
Tax cheats.
Yes, people who have been
Billionaires.
cheating in their taxes. But apparently,
CEOs. Am I right?
this is a talking point.
Republicans. They're afraid of the IRS. Maybe that's it.
You know what? Do you ever listen to Heather Cox Richardson, or the historian? So there's a historian who she's excellent. She has a podcast. She and one of her other historian friends have a podcast called Now and Then. She also does a daily newsletter. And literally this week, and I think it's largely because they kind of take what is happening in like the news and put it into context of American history.
Yep.
Guess which party created income taxes?
The Republican Party.
Sure did.
Of course they did.
And I mean, they talk about this last episode where they're talking about it. I mean, at one point in England, there was a window tax. And so that's why when you're in England, there's windows that are all bricked over because people started bricking over their windows at one point because they didn't want to get taxed. And so like the ideas of what we tax and how we tax and King's
tax on
taxing.
sunlight. How much sunlight you let into
and
your
so
house.
like it's a fascinating episode, but it was one of those moments because you know how you ever see those gotchas from like Prager University or Breitbart. It was like, which party actually ended slavery?
I like this one better.
I like this one better too. But it's just like, the party's platforms change. But yes, at one point, the Republican Party actually was the party that created income taxes.
So why are we talking about the IRS?
We were talking about the IRS because I've seen multiple Republican electeds talking about the IRS and
the message discipline.
And being, even in our senior senator, saying in a tweet, who do you think they'll weaponize the 87,000 IRS agents against? The answer is obvious. They're political enemies.
This is so absurd. So like this is because out of everything that the Inflation Reduction Act that just passed the United States Senate, which every Republican voted against, including Ron Johnson, that will make prescription drugs more affordable, make healthcare plans through Obamacare more affordable, reduce carbon emissions, create good paying union jobs, all pay down the debt to the tune of $300 or $400 billion, close tax.
Million. Is it billion? Oh, it is billion. You're right.
Close tax loopholes, establish a corporate minimum tax of 15% on companies that are worth more than $1 billion.
Also put a tax on stock buybacks.
Those are all good things that people really, really like. So what do Republicans do? They can't defend the vote. So they have to try and take one little part of it and use it to try and scare you. And this is what we're talking about. One of the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act is to allow the IRS to upgrade its technology right? And to hire more caseworkers and agents to make sure that when people have questions for the IRS, they can get them answered in a timely fashion. When people file their taxes and they're expecting a tax refund, that happens more quickly. But in the minds of Republicans who know they don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to voting against this bill, they would have you believe that all of a sudden 87,000 IRS agents are just going to be kicking in doors all over the country. Get out of here. Like, what are we doing?
You get an audit, and you get an audit, and you get an audit.
Oh my God.
And one of the things you and I were talking about at the break is like the very real frustrations of when you need to get a hold of the IRS.
When you need to get a hold of the IRS, you like need to get a hold of them because you're trying to buy a house or, you know, take out a school loan. There's like valuable reasons, important reasons that you need the IRS. And I swear to God, I saw a picture of the cafeteria at the IRS. There's no room to eat. All of the paper files from during the pandemic where people sent in their tax returns are just sitting on lunch counters.
Really?
Yes, they're so far behind. They are months and months and months behind because as the pandemic hit and they went to telework like everybody else, it became harder for them to process the physical tax returns that are mailed in. A lot of people e-file, but there's still millions of Americans who send in a paper document. And the backlog since then has still not been worked through because Republicans would rather starve the IRS of resources and staff. And what does that do? It makes it harder for people to get their money back.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here. And so between, you know, how politically unpopular the vote that they just took against the Inflation Reduction Act and the fact that federal agents got a federal judge to sign off on a search warrant for Mar-a-Lago. And Republicans are out here trying to scare people about 87,000 IRS employees. And it's nonsense. It's just crazy.
Well, it also, the way it rings to me is kind of the same thing I think we said on Monday. Was it Monday or was it Sunday night or Monday night that the FBI went to Mar-a-Lago?
Monday night.
Monday night. So this was yesterday that we were talking about this. And the idea that, you know, flipping on its head, it's like, well, if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. And it's kind of the same thing. If there's 87,000 more IRS agents and you're not evading taxes,
you're
you
good.
have nothing to worry about.
Yeah. In fact, you'll get your call answered quickly if you have a question for them.
Because wasn't that the background of this is that circa 2017, I might be totally botching this, so feel free to correct me, either you, Jane, or text your caller. But didn't the IRS have major cuts?
Yeah,
in the very
it was
beginning
probably part of the Trump tax cuts.
That's what I thought. I thought that like, this is part of something that like there was massive cuts to the IRS. Right. And that's why we're having it. This predates the pandemic of what the backlog and what that idea. Well, like the likelihood that you're going to get an audit is very low because they have bigger fish to fry.
They
right now
want
because they're so short-staffed.
They want a toothless IRS that cannot enforce the tax laws that are on the books. That costs us money. If you're concerned about the national debt, you know what? Let's make sure that people are paying the taxes they owe. How is that more likely to happen? If you have IRS agents who can run the appropriate number of audits and hold people who are trying to pay less taxes or no taxes than they owe are held accountable, right? And that's one of those things where I'm trying to not get too wonky here. There are parts of the Inflation Reduction Act that raise revenue. It creates dollars for the federal government, right? And so some of those there will be savings through Medicare because they'll be able to negotiate for lower prescription drug costs, right? So Medicare will cost less. That's a good thing. And it means there's more federal revenue to use to like pay down the debt. We also know, and we see this at the state level and at the federal level, that if you like for every one full-time employee position that you create in a tax enforcement agency, whatever you spend to hire that person, the federal government recoups more than that in chasing down tax cheats and people who are not paying their fair share. So it's actually like a net positive in the ledger, and you've got more money to pay down the debt or to invest in the military or to put towards, whatever you want. So it's a choice. Republicans want a toothless IRS. Democrats would like people to pay the taxes that they owe.
So as far as, because this speaking of are we calling it the IRA?
I like the Inflation Reduction Act. IRA is a little too Northern Ireland.
That's
for
what I was
me.
thinking. I was like,
Yeah.
I keep seeing that acronym, and I was like, this feels like the dark times in. Actually, did you ever watch Derby Girls or Dairy Girls?
No.
Great show. Great show.
Which service?
Hulu, and it takes place in the early 90s in Northern Ireland, but it's a comedy about teenage girls set in the backdrop of what it was like
Of
to
the
just
Troubles.
Yeah, of the troubles of them just like having to live their life, but it's very funny.
Huh.
And the creator of the show, this was exactly what her life was. And she's like, listen, everyone was hilarious. The women in my life growing up, because you had to have a sense of humor to live through that time, because you didn't stop your life just because a bridge was blown up. Like you just went the other direction and you like went on with your day.
Are we in that kind of time again? Is that why you're so happy? All of a
No,
sudden? You have a
I
better
just
sense of humor than
my
the rest of us?
ADHD took me down a tangent, but we're coming back. We're coming back to the Inflation Reduction Act. Does any of it, because there's so much good stuff in here that I think we should be excited about. I have not gotten into it. I've seen a lot of different years where things start to go into play. Does anything, like when is the soonest we'll start to see the effects of this?
Oh yeah, there'll be impacts immediately. I mean,
Okay.
starting next year for the next 10 years, one of the things that I think is great about this, but we've heard sort of top level, like this is the biggest investment in, combating climate change that the country's ever seen. It'll get us on a track to reduce carbon emissions up to 40% by 2030. All of that is great, but what does that actually mean, right? And so in addition to all of the other things the bill does on healthcare and on paying down the debt, there's also some economic stimulus stuff in here around green construction, renewable energy projects, right? So for the next 10 years, if you build a utility scale solar or wind farm, you're going to be eligible for a tax credit if you pay prevailing wage, if you follow, what are sometimes referred to as high road labor standards, if you employ a certain number of apprentices on these builds. And that's great because it means that we'll create more union, good paying jobs right here in Wisconsin and around the country. Then if you use American made products to build the wind turbines or the solar panels, you will get an additional tax credit. And so what this is doing is we see the marketplace evolving, right? The marketplace has decided renewable energy is the future. We see all the big utilities in Wisconsin, Alliant, We Energies, I'm forgetting one of them. They're all moving towards that, right? They've got big solar projects coming. What the Inflation Reduction Act does is make it more likely that those projects will employ Wisconsin workers, will pay prevailing wage, will hire union workers. That will help get more people into the workforce at family sustaining jobs. And we should all be really excited about that. I think it's a great way that we sort of view the market sort of points things in a direction. But now instead of these utilities, going for the 5-cent parts in China, they can use American made products, American workers. That's a good thing.
It is a good thing. So let's hope it passes on Friday, which I think it will. All right, when we come back, change it up. The kids are all right. Maybe the future's not so bleak. As goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. It's still the rock theme. Still not wrong on the rock theme. Classic rock.
There is more of a through line than that.
All right, I gotta think. All right, this is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Guest Joe Zepecki. We are still, help me figure out what the theme of the bumper music is, because I have not figured it out yet. But if you want to join us, shoot us a text.
I'll give you one other hint.
All right.
I'm a huge nerd. Just got to remember that about me.
I don't
tell everybody this, but just so you know, Kristin, just don't tell anybody else. I'm a huge nerd.
I still don't know. 844.
And I think she thinks she knew that about me already.
I did know that. That doesn't help me. 844-96-PARTY if you would like to text or call us. If you have ideas on what the theme of the music is, because I'm no idea. All right. Lighter topic. I saw this before you tweeted this out, but do you want to set it up? This lovely video of sportsmanship?
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but things are bad. The world's gone crazy. It's lost its mind. And so something I try to do every single day is find a little something to restore my faith in humanity, to feel good about. And oftentimes, not often enough, but oftentimes I find that on Twitter. And if I see it, I'll put it out there.
Interesting. That's your go-to is Twitter?
No.
Where to find good things?
Ooh, walked right into that one, didn't I? I go to lots of places to get, but occasionally I will find something really heartwarming that makes me feel good about humanity on the line in the Twitters. And yesterday, I'm scrolling through. Rex Chapman is very good at this. Follow Rex Chapman,
Jane agrees.
Former basketball player. He finds these nice moments out there that will restore your faith in humanity. So there was a clip that he had shared from the Little League World Series, which I feel like we've kind of all seen. It's on ESPN, 11, 12, 13-year-old.
Some of us have played in it. Not me.
Yes. Okay, not you. Not a baseball player, this one.
I actually was a baseball player. I played when I was 9 years old. I was one of two girls in the Little League.
That's awesome.
I was not very good, but I played.
And part of what's been so cool about kind of the explosion of interest in the Little League World Series is, remember a couple of years ago, there was the young woman who was like just lights out, like, great pitcher. So it's this sort of annual event where these kids get to like kind of be treated like star athletes.
Because what's the age range? Like 13
it's like
to
11
14?
to 13.
Okay.
Yes, these are pretty young kids. And they get their, their walk-up music, and they get these little like stats and information about them on TV. And it's all broadcast on ESPN, which is fantastic. And so there was a game in this year's Little League World Series where a pitcher unfortunately hit a batter, and he kind of hit him like kind of where the helmet, not like square in the helmet, but in a place where it knocked the kid's helmet off.
Basically, had there been no helmet, would have been like his temple.
Yeah. And so like that's scary, right? And so the kid who got hit the deck, and the helmet went flying, and thank goodness the kid was okay. The kid who got hit was okay.
This is why you wear a helmet.
So he went over to first base, and he could see that the pitcher was pretty upset. Like he felt bad about hitting this, competitor in the head and seeing the helmet fly. And he was kind of broken up and kind of choked up and like having a hard time gathering himself. And this young man who just got beamed by a pitch, walks over to the mound, and he embraces this guy and just says, "Hey man, you're doing fine. You're doing great. Like, it's okay. I'm okay." And to see that level of sportsmanship from young people is just so pure. And there's so many lessons in baseball and in competition, in sports, that I worry that so many adults, the ones who are supposed to be responsible grown-ups, have forgotten, right? When you lose, at the end of the day, you congratulate your opponent, right? You don't ask for a recount. If you collide with somebody you didn't mean to and they fall down, you help your opponent up so that they can get back in the game and get you the next play. That's what sportsmanship means to me. And so to see that from these young men, it really just, I think this was in the tweet and I meant it. As I'm watching this, I could feel that my level of faith in humanity was like being charged back up. And we see a lot of stuff these days that kind of depletes that faith in humanity. But to see that from those kids yesterday, it did it for me. The kids are all right. Thank goodness.
But you work with kids. So how often do you see kind of, maybe not on this level, especially on the, like they're not on ESPN, so we don't get to see it broadcast. But I mean, do you feel like kids innately have more sportsmanship in them that either needs like in them already or that it needs to be taught to them?
I don't think it's innate. I think that it is an acquired life skill, and it is modeled both by parents and by the athletics that young people watch, right? So if you watch, good sportsmen and women, compete on the pitch or on a football field or in a volleyball match, and if you see that modeled by whatever team you like or whoever your favorite player is, you're going to be more likely to do that. If you have, parents who are the scream at the officials, my kid is the best, number one all the time. Why isn't my kid playing the whole game? Why aren't they the starting pitcher? Why aren't they the star player? The young people will model more of that. And so it's really important that we always remember that all the kids are watching. We have an example to set for the next generation. I've often said, like, it's all about the kids, and they're all our kids. Right. And, you can make fun of me, get in my mentions and, say it takes a village, but it does. Right. And, I consider myself very fortunate to have gotten to play the amount of sports that I did, to have had the role models that I did, and to now be able to hopefully in some small way pass that on to the young men and women that I coach.
Look at you. So wholesome.
Got to feel good about something at the end of the day.
No, I know. I mean, I have not been a coach. I was raised by a coach. No, I mean,
You'd probably make a really good coach.
And he was a very good coach, and he took coaching very seriously. And I think he very much approached coach. He does like to win. Don't get me wrong.
So do I.
But
also, to be clear,
the sentiment was always, you're playing this sport in order to become a better person, and being a good person and being responsible and held accountable to things is more important than winning the game. And so if that means the starter got sat because he screwed up and he had a bad attitude and they lost the game, that was the price. All right, well, when we come back, speaking of bad behavior and tribalism as we get older, how much does that change our reality? I think a lot. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. This is Kristin Brey. My guest today is Joe Zepecki. Have we had any texts yet? No text. See, maybe this is just too hard of a riddle, but we're trying to guess where Joe's mind was at when he came up with the bumper music playlist. So we played Back in Black.
Yep.
We've played the Immigrant Song.
Yep.
We've played Come and Get Your Love.
Iron Man.
Is it Marvel?
These are all needle drops in the MCU.
Hey!
You got it.
Got it.
Well done.
There you go. You know what? Actually, why I really thought it is because I love the song we just played
Immigrant Song
from
Led Zeppelin,
Ragnarok,
which is in Thor Ragnarok. It's fantastic.
and that's my top 5 Marvel movie. It's so funny.
It's one of the best. And so there was a Sweet Child of Mine is in the new Thor movie.
Oh,
That was in the trailer.
I haven't
even
seen
if
it
you
yet.
haven't seen the movie. Was it Redbone, Come and Get Your Love? Was it Guardians of the Galaxy? Iron
Which
Man?
has a great soundtrack in general. The soundtrack for Guardian, especially the one, is so good.
Yeah. So I think it's a time for heroes. We need more heroes. And I was thinking about heroes last night, and I thought, but there's some awesome needle drops in the MCU. Let's do it.
Did you ever end up watching The Boys?
I did. I finished it. Oh my God. Oh my
We're
God.
going to diverge from what we had planned to talk about, just to talk about, because a time for heroes. What kind of heroes are we talking about?
The good kind.
The kind
the Marvel comic universe kind. The Steve Rogers Captain America kind. Not the Homelander kind in The Boys.
Do you know what we're talking about, Jane? You've never watched The Boys?
So,
I don't know. What's your threshold for violence?
Very low.
Okay, so you're not going to like it.
Yeah, I can't.
Not a Quentin Tarantino person?
No.
Okay, yeah, you're not going to like this. It's a very violent, over the top show about what if superheroes were real in the world we actually live in, where they would be celebrities and
it is astonishingly
and actually be
good.
used in like war, and so much of it is
Social commentary.
Yeah.
It's so good. It blew my mind how good it was, because it clearly has something to say about the times in which we find ourselves, about sort of the political and economic realities, about arts and entertainment and culture and how that impacts us, misinformation, disinformation, and the media
spin.
You name it. This show is saying a lot. It is extraordinarily well done. I wish that the barrier to entry of the gore wasn't such a problem, because I feel like there's a lot of people like Jane and like my better half who are just like,
I can't get into it.
But in terms of the commentary and how smart it is, I think a lot more people would like it. But if you have a stomach for that kind of stuff, watch The Boys.
Yeah, it is. I had that as a maybe next time you're on, we can talk about if that was the world you lived in, because I think the common icebreaker question of what superpower would you have if you ever had to choose a superpower? But in the world of, it's hard to not abuse the power that you have, which is the world that The Boys exists in, which is probably more likely if superheroes were real. Would you, coming up against the choice to be a soup, which is what they're called.
Would you take the V?
Would you take the V? Would you take the choice to have a superhero or like a superpower that can cause lots of damage? Or would you choose to be a plebeian? A mere peasant.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer to that?
I can certainly imagine scenarios where I would take the V.
What would you want your...
And to be clear, they would all be about protecting people I love.
Yeah.
Right? Like if that was what you're up against, and like you don't matter, your loved ones do. Like you got to do what it takes.
Right.
Period. Right? What would my superpower be? I don't know. I mean, it would not be a voice for radio, because I'm exhausting that as we speak.
Because you already got that. That's not a superpower.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I've been on the radio my whole life.
You got 23 minutes
23
left.
minutes to go. I don't know. What would yours be? Can
I think to teleport.
Can being taller count as a superpower?
No.
Damn it.
I think to teleport and not have to deal with airlines. Just like snap your fingers and not have to ever have a canceled flight ever again and be able to get there.
Then why not fly?
Because teleport, you get there even faster. You're not getting bugs in your face.
Bugs on the
Bugs and
windshield,
birds
wipe
just
'em.
like hitting you in the face. Like,
That's why you wear a mask.
Oh, I thought that was because of COVID.
No, for
Oh,
your
okay.
eyes, for your eyes, with little shield.
Goggles.
Maybe
Little goggles.
Yeah,
goggles. I don't know.
all right. Well, that was a quick diversion from the.
Yeah, speaking of
conversation.
esoteric conversations, Amazon Prime is where
You can watch that
The Boys
show.
is available, by the way. Since we're all working for corporate overlords like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, sorry, even when we're not working for them.
Yes, exactly. Just promoting the stuff that they make. So I feel like this a lot. I think I even said it this week once already, of understanding that there are times that I know that I am catching myself in my own confirmation bias or my own making excuses for quote unquote people on our side and can see why they did it or what, like make excuses for them versus when the quote unquote other side does it. And like, I know that I'm guilty of it. I try to step away. I try to get more information from multiple sides. It's why I listen to the Bulwark, and stuff like that. But it's like that real gut instinct of this is what our side feels. And so this is what I feel. And what should feel like a very easy question right now that is partisan, just like everything else, is, Joe, are we in a recession right now?
I don't know. I'm not an economist. I mean, that's the only answer you can give, right?
That was like a Ketanji Brown Jackson. I can't give you a definition of a woman. That is not my job right now. So basically,
Or did you want me to take the partisan approach?
No. But
Okay.
I think that is something that has a definition of the GDP shrinking for two quarters in a row.
GDP.
What did I say?
I think you said GOP.
No, I didn't. Did I? GDP. The GDP, not the GOP. The GDP shrinking 2 quarters in a row
Yes.
is the definition of a recession.
Whose definition? The National Council of Economic Advisors?
Probably.
What I'm seeing is that you have to take into account consumer spending, the labor market.
Yes.
rates,
So it is a more complicated question.
Yeah.
Is like, how do we define this? But it is also something that has now been able to, just like statistics, or how to lie with statistics. How do you lie with definitions and things that are wonky to be able to be like, we are in a recession, we're not in a recession, and depending on who you're cheering for.
I feel like
It
I'm
seems
in
like where
an
people are-
interrogation room and there is like a white hot spotlight on me. Like you're asking the communications guy about all of the trickeration we use when it comes to putting the best positive spin on stories. Do I have to plead the fifth during this conversation?
No. This is not supposed to be about, it's not meant to, I did not bring this topic up specifically to talk about whether or not we're in a recession. I brought the topic up because of
the way our brains are broken?
Not even broken, they're actually built to be like this, right? They are built to take information and use the information that is stored somewhere else in our brain. It's why stereotypes are a thing, right? Like
In-groups, out-groups.
In-groups, out-groups. Our lizard brain works in ways to recognize patterns.
Have you been reading Corruptible? Did you get that on tape?
No,
After
but I also, no.
Okay. We talked about this one of the times.
Is this in that?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is a lot of different things, right?
Sure.
This is like this is Ezra Klein's Why We're Divided, or it's all the partisan literature I've read, The Righteous Mind, all of that stuff.
Yep.
But it's like, how do you, in trying to be a responsible, as objective as possible, consumer of information, who still has a thought and opinion on where you want the world to be, how do you parse through that and actually get to like any sense of reality? Or does reality just not even exist anymore?
Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?
Have you taken the red pill or the blue pill?
Yeah. So the older I've gotten, the more that I have sort of just decided that like, you don't have to be certain all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to like not know. It's okay for there to like, there are very few things in life that you know with 100% certainty. Right.
Or that you won't change your mind on
That you can't
eventually
change
as you
your
get
mind.
more information on said
Right.
topic.
And like, well, I feel like when you're young, you're like dead set certain about everything. And if you stay like that, that becomes a problem. Right. the way I've described this challenge is, it seemed like there was a time in American history where what you thought about events that happened or took place, or how you felt about what somebody said, that helped inform who you voted for and what you thought about American politics. And now it is the total opposite. Who you vote for and your own politics determine what you think about what people say, what you believe, events that happen in the world. And that's backwards in my view. And I'm like you. I can't say that I never fall victim to that, but I've tried to think more about different perspectives. I've tried to be less certain, and I've tried to do a better job of sort of drawing a distinction between what I know and what I think. And there is a big difference, right? Part of the problem with politics and political rhetoric is that everybody sounds so dang certain all the time. And you know what? Almost none of this stuff is a like a lead pipe lock thing you can be certain about.
It's all Jello.
Almost every single public policy choice in America that we've ever made has led to an unintended outcome. Some good, some bad, right? Like there are absolutely some hard and fast things that like we should decide to protect, like freedoms, right? And because of how complicated the world is and how many people are in it and everything else, there's any choice you make is going to have some type of unintended consequence. You can't control everything. And we just have to be more honest about that. And I think part of why it's so hard for people to do that right now is it feels like the world is spinning faster and faster and more out of our control. And people just want to feel like they at least can get their arms around their own life and their own world and be in control. And what's really scary about that is when you feel like that is when you are susceptible to things like strongmen and authoritarians who are coming in and telling you like, I will take care of this. I have it all. I am the only one who can do this. And we have to be really, really careful about that, because if we go down that path, we're going to lose some things that we took for granted and that matter far more than any choice that politicians make, right? Like nothing that politicians in Congress can do to the tax code is as important as the bedrock principles of our democracy, that we, the people, decide we are the sovereign and the elected officials work for us, right? So if you are in lockstep with me on what I would do with the tax code, but you are anti little d democracy, I'm sorry, I can't ride with that, because I think the ideas and values that this nation were founded on are way more important than what you're going to do the tax code, whether you're going to hire 87,000 IRS agents or fire 87,000 IRS agents. So what I would urge people to do is, if they find themselves sort of falling into that trap, just try to like unplug, put your phone down, go for a walk, and think about those core things that are the most important to you. Think about what you're certain about, or what you think, you're maybe a little less certain about. And, when you need to, check out Rex Chapman's Twitter feed, and maybe you can have your faith in humanity restored by some young men playing baseball.
My mom really likes the Dodo on Instagram, which is all like good feel good animal stories.
Okay.
Tank Good News is another good one to get some good.
Maybe I should just follow your mom
stories
on social media.
Well, she doesn't post anything, so you just have to follow. I think you can't see what people like anymore, so you can't go back and see what her activity is. No, but I agree with you. I mean, we don't have time to get into the bigger question of. It's easy to say that, but then when you constantly are bombarded with, if you have to vote for us because the other guys are so bad, because I know that we get it on the Democratic side, and it's like, well, I can justify all the things that this politician does because they're not them. And it happens on the other side, right? And so it's like, as much as you know versus what you think, but when it comes to voting, you're still feeling stuck in like your tribe. But
are we out of time?
We are out of time. We got one more break and we'll come back. So we can keep it going after.
Yeah, I'll just make one comment after the break.
All right, sounds good. We'll be right back. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. This is Kristin Brey. Jade, the amount of vintage music you find is just, it makes my day.
This is me.
What is this from?
This is the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan, Captain America.
Oh, I thought this reminded me of the Wisconsin State Fair or the State Fair music that you were playing last week.
I'm not responsible for this.
This was all right.
Not the hero we deserve, but maybe the hero we need. Captain America, Steve Rogers. Or
not to be confused with
Falcon.
Soldier Boy.
Oh, yes. Or Falcon.
Or now Falcon.
In the current
when does he get his movie?
2024?
Because they have the TV show.
Yeah, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's actually where that needle drop is from.
Okay.
But fantastic song.
Fantastic.
And not a rock song.
Not a rock song. All right.
So
you were going to make a point, and then we had to go to break. So what is said point?
I think that the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago is a really interesting test of this, right? Because there are partisans who might say, who don't like Donald Trump, who go, aha, see, I knew he did it. No. We don't know what he did or didn't do. There are partisans on the Republican side who are Trump defenders who will say he couldn't have done anything wrong. This is an outrageous, violation of privacy of the former president. The reality is neither side knows whether that's true or not. So you have to take a step back and sort of think about, like, what do we know has to happen for a raid like that to be authorized? Okay. We know that an independent federal magistrate needs to see whatever evidence the FBI investigators have to sign off on the warrant. Just because they have evidence and they get a warrant signed off does not mean that anyone will be indicted for anything. This is the way that the judicial process plays out. And we should make the choice to trust that the FBI would not raid the home of a former president on like a hunch, right? Like, they understand the scrutiny here. So I think it's probably pretty clear that it's pretty buttoned up in terms of the evidence and like the righteousness of the warrant. But that still doesn't mean that he's violated any crimes or that he'll be indicted. We just have to wait and see. And that's okay, right? And that's what we should be doing. And so I will say, like, shame on both sides. Shame on the people saying, finally, Donald Trump is facing accountability. No, he's not. We don't know if he's done anything wrong yet, in terms of violation of the law. And to the partisans on the other side who are decrying this as something that Joe Biden puppeteered, like, give me a break. Joe Biden has enough respect for the rule of law. I can almost guarantee you that Joe Biden has made it a point that he has never been alone in a room with his attorney general, so that there are always witnesses who can attest to the conversations that they've had, because he respects the rule of law. And the only other thing I'd say on this, and again, this is where I'm trying not to be partisan, but it's like, when Republicans and Trump defenders are out here today saying if they could do it to the president, they can do it to anyone. Yes, thank you for making the point clear as day. No one in this country is above the law. No one should be above the law. We have a system. Let's let it work, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So now we can talk about really fun stuff.
Now, yeah, we'll end there on that one. But the one that I really wanted to get to, since we are all dog owners, it's National Spoil Your Dog Day. So what are you going to do?
Isn't every day National Spoil Your Dog Day? It certainly feels like it at our house.
What is the thing that you do that is the most egregious when it comes to spoiling your dog?
I'm not sure anyone spoils our dog Truman like the U.S. Postal Service.
Oh.
Shout out to our guys Abe and Rick, who are letter carriers in our neighborhood, who Truman has trained to always have treats on their person for him, to a point where, like, if we are walking down the street on a Sunday and Truman sees a white van shaped like a mail truck, he will just like lock in place and stare, hundreds of yards away, expecting that he's about to get a treat. It's adorable when it's not like, okay, come on, buddy, we gotta keep walking.
Go. Right? There's no treat.
So he's trained the letter carriers. He's also trained us, or he thinks he has, where he knows where the treats are up on top of the, and so he parks kind of by the kitchen table and he just stares right up at it. And he'll kind of like look to make sure you're looking. And if you are, he expects a treat. He's pretty spoiled. Now he's too big. He's 100-pound dog.
Oh, wow.
So he's too big to spoil in terms of like, you can come up on the couch or you can come in bed. But when he was a puppy, I did all that with him.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, mine, so with our not 100-pound dog, our 11-pound Chihuahua, Big Cliff, I would say it's on the bed because Mike is not a fan. I've now broken him too. But for a while, Mike was like, I can't, because he doesn't want anyone to touch him while he's sleeping. And Cliff loves Mike more than he loves me, so he wants to be next to Dad. But now he is settled for Mom, and I find it very comforting having him in the bed with me, especially because he gets like as close as like actually physically possible and curls up next to me. So I would say that is how we spoil Cliff.
How old is Cliff?
We think he's 12.
Okay.
We rescued him when he was 10, so he's like 12-ish. He also loves Ritz crackers, so he'll like in his little tiny mouth, like try to pick up the cracker if you put it on, and then he'll finally figure out how to flip it up, and then he'll go and gnaw away on it.
So humans are to saltines as Ritz are to Chihuahuas?
I don't know. Mike likes Ritz a lot too. So.
I just mean like how many of them can they eat before they go totally dry and have to
That's
stop?
a good point. That's a good point. Jane, what do you do?
Well, when Barks was still with us, we did do the doggy daycare route for the first couple of years, just because when they're puppies, and he had so much energy for like the first 3 years. And so on Fridays, he would go to doggy daycare so that when I picked him up at 5:30, he was dead.
Where would you take him, Jane?
There was a great place in Wauwatosa.
Okay.
Central Park.
Got it.
Central Park. And they do a little personality thing for them.
Daily
and they
report card.
Separate them into groups to make sure everybody's going to get along. And they really do a fantastic job. And it's just such a great way to get out some of that puppy energy at least once a week.
I would say the same thing about my friends at Bayview Bark, which is where Truman would go when he was a puppy. Among the things I discovered later was they like installed buttons on my dog that they didn't tell me about. So like
buttons on your dog.
Like they taught him stuff, but then they didn't tell me that they taught him it. So like I'd be out walking him and he'd find like he's on a leash and he'd be like on one side of like a chain fence, and he couldn't come under it to get. So I'd just be like over, and he'd go boing, and he'd just bounce right over. And I asked them like, "Did you guys teach my dog the difference between over and under?" They're like, "Oh yeah, that's one of the buttons we install."
Well, that would
it's a
be
weird
nice
way to phrase
know.
it. A button that we install on your dog.
He's not jumping over much of anything these days, though. He'll be 10 next month in October, and he's got a bionic knee. He's got some arthritis. He's a poor guy, but we're still spoiling him. Lots of love every day.
I'm trying to think of like an extra special thing to do for Cliff today.
You could get him a little pup cup or something.
Yeah, the Puppuccino from Starbucks. Yep,
that's a good idea.
Truman has Starbucks more often than I do.
Is he really?
Because I don't drink coffee. But when my wife or daughter goes, they'll often give him a pup cup.
What's actually in a pup cup?
I think it's just whipped cream.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I could just go get him
I
some
did not
cream.
get him a cream puff from the state fair.
You didn't get yourself a cream puff?
No, I got myself a cookie. And I'm almost done with it. I'm more of a cookie guy than a cream puff guy.
All right. Well, you're done with radio for the day. Exhale.
What a day it's been.
Drink some water. We'll see you next time, Joe Zepecki. I'm sure it won't be that long because I love having you here. And for us, we will be back tomorrow. This has been As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
It's the only song I have. Where's the verse? She used to bring me my newspaper.
You don't even know what